Good afternoon, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing another video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I just had the privilege of reading the U.S. Declaration of Independence, and I want to go over some things I learned. I've never actually read the thing myself in its entirety. It's basically a giant one-page document, and there are a lot of archaic terms, but they make sense if you pay attention. And I want to just go over a couple of things. It's basically what you would expect. It's a rejection of British rule for the most part. I'd say about 80% of it is specific complaints about the King of England at the time, his treatment of people, and their situation as deserving independence and why they believe they do. Some specific complaints about how the king is opening colonies next to theirs just to set an example and to create a situation of domination, and how the king is harassing their people and turning them against each other and meddling in their affairs, forbidding them from establishing their own courts and systems of law, forbidding everything of importance that could help them become independent and strong. And in short, they are reacting to all of these perceived abuses with a Declaration of Independence, saying we are no longer subject to the country of England, the King of England specifically, and he will no longer be a consideration for our legislation. Okay, so a couple of things I didn't mention and were surprising to me. It is specifically mentioned in the Declaration of Independence that a main point of contention by the colonies was the requirement of taxation by a country and a king who were patently not representing them. And the verbiage they use, the actual word they use to describe it, is non-consensual. They say it is without consent. The taxation that he is imposing is without our consent. And this is interesting to me because consensual taxation has been a subject of my videos. In many cases, I've mentioned this quite a bit, how taxation in its proper form should obviously be optional. That is consensual, something that you buy into, if not wholly, then in a package form where you can subscribe to services or whatnot. And I believe the near future is going to show something like this in terms of reform or revolution, because the current system flat out just isn't working. But this isn't about our current system. It's still about the Declaration of Independence by the U.S. There was another interesting part where they complained specifically about the king blocking immigration. And this is funny to me because it's quite the opposite today, having peopled the U.S., that is to say populated it beyond the point where people are comfortable. Some people are comfortable. They had the reverse problem back in the day. They had big areas that needed people. They had wilderness mainly, and huge areas that lacked population and representation and the votes that they wanted. So they were actually hoping for, and they were wanting people to come to the New World. They were, the colonies themselves, the U.S., the states, before they were united, wanted people to immigrate. They wanted very earnestly for people to come to the country to represent themselves and to work and to build communities. And their complaint in the Declaration of Independence against the king, one of them was that he was blocking immigration. It's just funny to me that we have gone so far off the rails with current immigration in contrast to the problems of their time. Now we have the opposite, where the U.S. is patently opposed to immigration and fighting it at every border. Back then they were fighting the king because he was closing the borders specifically. It's quite a flip-flop. Anyway, something to think about. And I guess the last thing that I noticed was the multiple mentions of happiness. The famous line, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, is actually in the Declaration of Independence. The purposes of all of these statements and the Declaration itself were to empower the citizens and just the people. They weren't so much described in terms of being separate or better than non-citizens. They were just the people of the colonies. The reason for the whole document ultimately was to establish and protect the rights of the people, the inalienable, God-given rights, as said in the document, to pursue happiness, life, and liberty. And I think that they were on the right track with all this stuff. Their eyes were wide open by hardship, by circumstances, by reality, by the real domination by a foreign controlling power, someone meddling in their affairs, someone aiming to keep them under the fold, under the umbrella of England, and it not being logical, not being practical for them, and definitely not working out for them. So, in final conclusion, I think it's interesting to look at it from the king's perspective too. You can imagine the King of England has a defective, or a number of citizens leaving the country en masse, defecting, including military people, to the New World with promises of prosperity, promises of free land and all the stuff that they had at the time. And the king is in a tight spot. Okay, so he is wrestling his domestic land. He's wrestling with his people for thousands of years at this point. I'm sorry, not the king, but the country, perhaps, and its predecessors have been wrestling the territories, the region there, and colonies that have spawned from that territory, including the New World. He's got a lot on his plate, and now all of a sudden he's got this headache with these people who are giving him problems overseas, over the Atlantic Ocean. And what's he going to do about it? Okay, so this is a lesson for future generations, future historians, and future kings, such as they are, to consider the trade-offs of acquiescing to logic, acquiescing to geographical realities. Now, when a people go overseas, when they cross the Atlantic Ocean, some very large body of water, such as the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to have a major problem. And he saw it, and he didn't know how to handle it, obviously. His move was to fight them. He wanted to retain control of the territory for the present time and for the future, because they being the English, the British administrators, thought, okay, these guys are perhaps going to become a military adversary, and they have untold amounts of real estate and resources over there. This could be a very serious problem for England and our other colonies. So we want to retain these guys under our rule, under our law, by any means necessary. We want to dominate them. We want to nip this in the bud and make this a British colony by any means necessary. So that's what he tried to do, but his hand was very heavy, and he meddled in their affairs. He did it also in the Declaration of Independence. He did it with cruelty. He did it with, they said in the document, unparalleled since the most barbaric ages. That level of cruelty is what they said in the document, and it was one of their complaints. So there's only so much cooperation you can get at the end of a stick, turns out. In political terms, in managerial terms, in a business or whatever, in the home, domestically, you have to have sense. You have to have reason, and you have to have incentives, right? You have to have a balance between the carrot and the stick, or else people will revolt eventually. They will find a way. You won't find out about it until it's too late. It cannot be all stick. And we find this to be a repeating historical pattern, unfortunately, such as with the American Revolution, such as in many other cases when a despot or a monarch is unpopular, especially in a region that is far away, and they resort to the stick primarily, threats and scare tactics and abuses in order to shore up sedition and revolutionary impulses. They just start beating up everybody, but it never works, is my point. It never works. And really, ultimately, what it does is it gives the resistance a reason to grow. It gives them the philosophical and moral high ground. And that is, if you look at history again, what always wins a war. Whoever is philosophically superior has the lowest point of energy. They have the highest center of gravity, or sorry, the lowest center of gravity, and they have the longest and strongest constituency if they have what is called philosophical righteousness, philosophical superiority. The ones who are ready philosophically, in principle, invariably collect the most resistance. They have the most people back them and band with them, even if they don't start out that way. And every single time they win the war. You can predict who's going to win a war. It's the people who have thought it most through, who have been right all along. quite sure. Reach out if you like with questions or comments down below. Thank you.